I found this old Sony a7II on Marketplace for $600, and a lot of people are asking like, oh, does it rival the a7 III? Just kidding, I don't know how many people are asking that. But if you wanted to grab the a7II today, it's about 750 Canadian dollars, or it's $1,100 to get the a7 III. So let's talk about my like street shoot that I did with the a7II and talk about like, maybe it's worth it to get the a7 III, or do we just keep this oldie but a goldie? For the street shoot with the a7II, I used 3 different lenses. One was a $100 pancake lens, another one was like a more premium build prime lens that's like $800, and lastly I adapted a vintage lens from my grandfather onto the a7II, so you'll be able to see examples from all of these. As always, the raw files and a free preset are in the description below. Let's get into the pros. Now, I bet you weren't thinking I was gonna talk about video first, because no one in their right mind in 2026 would recommend this for video, right? Wrong. I actually think it's really good for video. You just have to follow these 6 rules. Rule number 1 is that you have to use a wide lens. Rule number 2 is make sure that steady shot on page 7 is actually turned on. Rule number 3, make sure you're using like an image stabilized lens or just a tripod. Rule number 4, use S-Log3 with these settings. Rule number 5, carry lots of batteries. And rule number 6, use my S-Log2 conversion LUT. I'll leave it in my Patreon for free. It's like a fun creative challenge. If you can make the a7II look good for video, you've mastered video. You got it. So while this is a 10-year-old camera, it does have a 24 megapixel sensor, and I have been reaching for it a lot more lately. I had a buddy visiting from Toronto, and he wanted to see one of Canada's biggest trees. So I charged up the a7II, and we drove for 3 hours on some logging roads, and we found Big Lonely Doug. When I turned on the a7II, however, it only had 1% battery, so it didn't charge, unfortunately. I don't know what was wrong with the cable. So I had very limited time to shoot photos, but this is what I got. And I also noticed with the 24 megapixel sensor, it was pretty easy to crop in, and the detail I got, because I shot raw, was just incredible. Another pro of this camera is the lens selection. So as we know, like E-mount has been around for over a decade, and that allows us just to have third-party cheap lenses like this little pancake lens here, and also adapt vintage lenses and things like that. If you want to shoot vintage lenses, this camera has really good manual focus settings within it. So I turned on my peaking and then focus magnification, and I was good to go. Really quick, if you're finding value in this video, it goes a really long way if you could just leave a like. 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much, and let's dive back in. So what about ergonomics and build quality? That's one of my favorite things about this. A lot of like the Sony a6000 series cameras, they don't really have like a nice grip on it, but with the nature of this being a full frame sensor, I think it's just like a slightly bigger camera. It's a lot smaller than my a7 IV, I would say. My a7 IV has a bigger grip, but for what this is, it feels really comfortable in the hand, and the build quality is incredible. The a7II has built-in in-body image stabilization, which is pretty big because the a7 original didn't have it. So that helps both in photography and videography. And you're gonna find that you're able to drop the shutter speed. So in low light situations like that, it's just gonna be easier to shoot handheld, and you don't need a tripod with you all the time. Here's one of the pictures I took with my Sony a7II on my street shoot. And I'm gonna be showing you how to turn a photo to video, so if you're with me on that, great. If not, skip ahead to here. First thing you're gonna do is sign up for free and then upload an image like I have here. Then we're gonna prompt it together, and what I like to do with my prompt is put it into ChatGPT, and you can refine it a little bit, or just use the auto prompt that comes from Artlist, or you can like just make up and type whatever you want. This is the prompt that I used for my project. I then sprinkled in a little bit of cinematic music, and this was the final result. One thing I really like that Artlist is doing right now is they're protecting the likeness of people like you, your friends, the people you take pictures of on the streets. You're no longer allowed to just like upload a random picture of someone and tell it to do something like a celebrity or just a random person. So I do like that there's like some kind of morality coming back to AI. Artlist rarely does any type of sale, but right now on certain plans you can get 40% off. So make sure you click the link in my description to check that out. Thank you, Artlist, for continuing to sponsor this channel. And now back to the video. Two more things before we talk about the cons of this camera. So number one is I actually think for a 10-year-old camera, this has pretty solid autofocus. It's not gonna catch all the time when you're tracking like a subject coming towards you, especially if they're on a bike or in action and things like that, but it does a pretty good job. And as mentioned, I do use manual focus on this or single shot quite a bit, and I find that helps a lot in just making sure that I nail focus. Lastly, a lot of people are gonna say that the Sony a7II sucks for in-camera colors for photography. And while I have a tendency to think that they are a little bit bland, I really like to edit my photos in Lightroom anyway. So that's just part of the creative process that I really enjoy. And if you shoot raw, you're able to push the colors and make them do whatever you want. So no big deal there. So even though I said it was good for video because it has S-Log2, it does have some limitations. And one of those is the inability to shoot in 4K. For the majority of people watching this video, your phone is going to be completely fine in 4K. It's super convenient to shoot for video. But for people trying to learn like how to properly expose, like exposure triangles and things like that, and how to shoot log, this is one of like the best ways to start for super cheap. And again, if you can make this image look really good for video, you're just leaps and bounds ahead of people in terms of like understanding how to expose for S-Log and things like that. The biggest con of this camera is definitely the battery life. These things are tiny, and they updated it on the a7 III, so that's now the same as my a7 IV, and I'm completely fine with those. But this is the size of like those tiny APS-C A5000, A6000 line, and I would say that if you're buying this used, you're probably gonna have to replace these anyway. So buy a 2-pack on Amazon. They're really cheap, but you're gonna wanna carry lots of them. Some final cons for you is that this only has a single SD card slot, so you can't redundant record if you're using it professionally. However, I do think the sensor is pro level, even in 2025 or 2026 on this camera. The sensor's fine, but you're not able to dual record. Lastly, the menus are kind of lame, and then the EVF is not the best either. So should you still pick up the a7 II? Well, for me, I think it's an amazing camera to learn on for photography and for video. I think if you want to learn manual settings, if you want to learn how to shoot S-Log, there's probably no better full frame option out there right now. Again, if you're on a budget, because I do think for the little bit extra money, the a7 III is probably the smarter choice. But if you're strapped or find a really good deal on the a7 II, I think that it's a great way to go. I'm completely fine with having this in my bag for photography in 2026, but I think I'd be more likely to grab one of my Fujis in terms of just like street photography and things like that, just out of convenience. But this camera is no slouch when it comes to photography or even video. If you are curious about the a7 III, I did a full video review on it here, so click that next and we'll talk soon.